One of the things that has been in the news a lot lately and in the financial headlines are SPACs. So what is a SPAC? A SPAC is a special purpose acquisition company. And SPACs are generally just what most people would consider a shell company. They're sponsored by investors. What you're hearing a lot now lately is, entertainers and athletes are creating these SPACs, and they're going out and they're making investments with them. So how do they actually work? So the sponsor, the entertainer, the athlete, or the investor group will put together a company, and its sole purpose is to go out and raise money. So the investors put money into the SPAC, and that's all that the SPAC really has. So they're often called a blank check company because their only asset is the cash that the investors have put into it. So what does the SPAC do? So once the investors have put their money in, the SPAC will go out and look for a target, an acquisition that they want to do. And they usually have between 18 and 24 months to get that acquisition completed. When they find the target that they want, the typical form that the acquisition takes is a merger. So the investors in the SPAC have their shares of the SPAC, and they exchange those shares for the SPAC and whatever in the target. So that's the typical structure, and the SPAC investors get to vote on whether or not they want to participate in that transaction. So if they do want to participate, they exchange their shares for the shares of the acquired company. And if they don't want to participate, the SPAC investor usually just gets their money back out of the SPAC. So what happens if the SPAC goes out and it doesn't find a company that it wants to invest in? Usually what will happen is after that 18 or 24 month period, the SPAC will liquidate and the investors get their money back. So that's the basic structure of it, not that complicated. So why would you want to use a SPAC? They've actually been around for decades, and they've just recently become more popular. The reason for that is primarily two. One is the reporting requirements when you do a normal merger transaction or an IPO, an initial public offering, are pretty onerous. The second reason that the SPACs are becoming more popular is just the volatility in the market. So let's take the first one real quick. When you're a company that's going to do an IPO, that's a very long process of getting your financial records in order, preparing disclosure documents. There's a lot of legal fees, accounting fees, investment banker fees, and that's a 6 to 9 month process. When you do a SPAC transaction, the actual formation of the SPAC, it's a simpler process because the only thing that the SPAC has is cash. It doesn't have an operating facility or a manufacturing facility or any business operations, so it's a lot easier to do. So when the SPAC merges with the target company, that filing process with the SEC is a lot simpler. The other item that I mentioned was the volatility in the markets. So when you go out and you do an IPO, you're basically saying to the public, I want your money, but I really don't know what my company is worth until I do the IPO and you tell me how much you're going to pay for my shares. So that can be a very volatile situation. So when you do an IPO, the price of your IPO may skyrocket and go up and you get a lot more cash than you anticipated, but on the other hand, it can tank and you get a lot less money than you anticipated. So with the SPAC transaction, you can somewhat control the amount that you're going to get because you're negotiating with the investors of the SPAC for what your company is worth. So you know what the price is going to be, and if you don't like the price, then you don't do the transaction. That's why SPACs are becoming a little more popular these days.